Wonderful. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Unordained. I'm Catherine Roberts and I am so excited to be here, and I'm excited for everybody who is here with us. Let me start by saying happy Thanksgiving to all of my fellow Canadians. I hope you're all having a good day. I hope nobody ran out of turkey. There was supposed to be like a big turkey shortage, it's in the news and everything. So I hope everybody's surviving the turkey shortage of 2021. So I am very excited. This is a passion project that I've been working on for a long time. And I'm glad that we're at this point now. I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me. When I used to be a preacher, I would start off, if I was nervous, I would start off with a joke. And usually it was a joke on myself. And so I'm going to start off this evening by saying that one time I preached a whole sermon in front of a whole bunch of people with a pair of pantyhose hanging out of my pants. And didn't know it until it was over. So anyway, I'm this, as far as I know, this is one of the only webcast that features all ex-ministers, and that's really exciting for me. So I think with 100 and I added up the other day. Oh, geez, we have 150 some odd years experience in the ministry. Some of us have 5, and some of us are old and have way more than 5. But you know what? Combined total of 150 years in Christian ministry. So I think we have like a bit of a unique perspective on this whole topic. And so what we're going to be doing every week is talking about our stories. We're going to be sharing about how we got into religion and how we got out of religion and everything in between. We're going to talk about the kinds of things that we believed, the kinds of ministers we were, the kinds of things that we did in ministry. And we're going to talk about what issues we had with the Bible and God. And we're also going to be talking about our deconstruction experiences. And, we all have a unique view of those. And so here's the thing, we are all a little bit different here. We have represented, I think, several different denominations. I'm not even going to try to name them all out because I'll miss some. But I know offhand we have like ex-Pentecostals, ex-evangelicals. We have some ex-Jehovah's Witness, some ex-Mormons, and some of us were pastors, and some were evangelists, and some were worship leaders. So we all have a little bit different perspective. And also what's interesting about this panel that we have here is that we kind of run the gambit between right from agnostic theists to anti-theists, and kind of everywhere in between. So, and I'm going to let everybody tell their story and what they consider themselves. And so I'm going to start off by saying this. The purpose of this show is, even though we have a whole bunch of differences, we have one thing in common, and that is we all want to share our stories in a way that opens communication between those who are of faith, those who accept faith, and those who reject faith, I guess. And so we really feel strongly that what is true is important. It seems like you turn on the TV nowadays and everybody has opinions, But it doesn't seem like everybody cares that much about what is actually true, and that is important to us. And so that's the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about faith and belief and reality and truth and um, rational thinking and all of those things that have to do with deconversion. Um, we're not going to give it to you all at once. Every week, we're going to be bringing you along our journeys. And like I said, we are going to be starting off next week. We're going to be talking about how we all met Jesus, how we all got to know God in the first place. Um, so it's going to be interesting. And I think that if you watch, here's the thing. Um, I think you'll learn something and I think you'll be entertained. And I think that we will together be able to um, kind of dispel a lot of myths that go along with people who reject faith. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. And I'm really excited. I don't know about everybody else. I'm going to be introducing the panel in a few minutes. And what we're going to do tonight is we're all going to take a few minutes and give you a little snapshot of our lives. And so um, I guess I'll just go ahead and start. And I'm going to tell you about me before I introduce anybody else. So um, I got some notes written down in case you see me looking down. So way back in the summer of 1996, I had an experience that I consider to be a genuine supernatural experience with a supernatural being. I felt like I had a very mystical spiritual experience, and I became what we call born again. Um, and so when that happened to me, I was home by myself with my three kids, and I was also in that time of my life, I was suffering with some pretty severe depression. And when I had that experience, I believed with all of my heart that I was instantly delivered from depression, and my life was changed. Like I really felt like a different person. And so I started going to church, a little local church, and I was welcomed with open arms. And uh, right from the very beginning, I loved Jesus with all of my heart. I have to say that I spent 22 years loving Jesus. Sometimes when I share my story, people say, well, I guess you weren't really a true believer. If you're an atheist now, you couldn't have been a true believer. But I'm here to tell you that there was never a single moment in my life that I did not endeavor to be the best Christian and the best Jesus follower that I could be. Um, I love God. I love the Holy Spirit. I love Jesus. I believe that the Bible was the inerrant word of God, and everything that I did was filtered through my relationship with God. And the Bible was basically the compass for all of my decisions. And so I had a deep, real, authentic, vital. I would have described my walk with God as all of those things, and people around me would have thought the same thing. And I love Jesus so much that right at the very beginning, after this experience, I felt like what we used to call a calling. I felt like I had a calling on my life. I wanted everybody that I knew to have the same wonderful relationship with God and life-changing experience that I had. And so right from the very beginning, I started basically in ministry, I suppose. Um, I started speaking at my first time speaking was in a Sunday school class. And then I spoke at an open air service, I think. And eventually I got invited to speak at women's meetings and retreats and different churches. Eventually I was a speaker in different groups and churches and organizations right across Canada, really. I couldn't tell you how many sermons I've preached, hundreds of sermons. So during the 20 something years that I was a Christian, let me see if I could tell you some of the things that I did. I used to have a children's ministry. I did children's church. I had a puppet ministry, which I loved. And I even got to go into like public schools with this puppet ministry. And I led Bible studies. I led prayer meetings. I was on the board of different ministries and different churches. I was the chaplain at a small private Christian school for a while and did weekly chapel services. I was a youth pastor for a while. I was on a pastoral team, and I was considered the pastor of prayer. What else? And eventually, I don't know if I'm leaving anything out there. I also used to write for the paper. You would write Christian articles for the paper. And so during my ministry, I preached, I traveled and preached, I counseled people, I baptized people, I considered myself to be an intercessor. I was a prayer warrior. I believed, I was involved in evangelism, prayer ministry. I homeschooled for a while. I had all kinds of experiences that I would say would have been that I called miracles and answers to prayer. And you know what? I can't wait to tell you about these things because I'm sure a lot of people would be shocked. My husband and I were known as people who were supernatural and seeing answers to prayer and miracles. And so I can't wait to tell you about some of these things. Ministry isn't the only thing I've done. I went back to school during these 20 years. I went back to school. I graduated as a paralegal. I had several government jobs. My husband and I started and sold several businesses. I've lived in 5 different provinces. What else did I do? I became a professional organizer. And most importantly, I raised 3 children in a very religious home. And in 2018, after 22 years of 22 years of faith, 22 years of having Jesus at the center of my life, 22 years of following the Bible, 22 years of ministering in the church, and 22 years of loving God, I went through another dramatic experience, I guess you could say, when I realized one day that I no longer believed any of it. And you know what? I can't wait to tell you this story too. But here's the thing. I've been through a lot of really hard times in my life. Um, illnesses, periods of depression. I struggled with an eating disorder for a while. Oh, Jesus. I mean, I lost everything in a Ponzi scheme from somebody at church and was homeless uh, even and lost my, oh, God, this thing. We lost our vehicles, our home, our business, everything, and we're homeless. And so I've been through a lot of stuff in my life and no, not losing, realizing that I no longer believed in God and realizing that I was an atheist is up there in the top 10 difficult things that I have gone through. But it's also the most rewarding and something that I'm most thankful for because my life right now I cannot begin to tell you how good my life is. I feel very lucky. I went from homeless to retired in less than 10 years, and um, I live by the ocean. I have a sweet dog named Maisie who likes to sit like a human. And I'm married. My kids are all grown. I have great friends, and I do marriages. I perform weddings. So um, I am happier and more authentic than I've ever been in all of my 53 years of living. And so I am on this Thanksgiving Day in Canada. I'm really thankful that I am an atheist. Um, and I'm hoping that a lot of my friends and stuff from my past life will tune into these shows and because I'm kind of the same person. I don't know about the rest of this panel here, but I lost all of my friends when I became an atheist. So I'm hoping that people that used to know me will listen to what we have to say, and that we can have some reasonable and logical and calm conversations about faith and the lack thereof. Amen. And so, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to introduce you to some of the nicest, funniest, warmest, and most interesting people that you've ever met. And I'm going to start. Listen, I like this first guy so much that I've been sleeping with him every night for 33 years. So this is who I'm going to introduce first. My wonderful husband, Sheldon, who hereafter is going to be called the Codfather. Hey, babe, how you doing out there in the living room?
Oh, fantastic.
Are you as nervous as I am?
You know, it's a lot of things that have hit me today. I just need to describe. I just need to say a little bit about myself so people have an understanding of who I am. I mean, how complicated is that? So there's really not a lot of preparation I can do, is it?
No.
So I'd like to start by saying I am so excited to be part of the first episode. And I don't know the panel real well, but what I know, it is fantastic to have such a wealth of information and experience and stories. Yeah. And so I'm actually excited for that. And I'm proud of you to see your vision start to materialize. It's been a long time coming, and I'm excited. I'm excited for you. As far as talking about myself, I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I could start off by saying it was a cold, stormy night in 1969. But I mean, the truth of the matter,
you were born in. Wait a second, you were born in '68. Listen,
oh, sorry, I was born in '68. I was born in '68. That's right. That's right, '68. And
trying to make yourself younger.
Well, that's right. I'm still younger than you. That's all that matters. But at the end, the truth, right now, I mean, I've been retired. We've been retired 5 years, and it is fantastic. I have well, I mean, I raise rabbits,
yes,
chickens, and eat chickens, and I have goats. I don't know if anyone has goats that's listening. Well, God, are they ever so much fun? And and I started gardening. Like I love gardening. I'm just living my life, and I'm enjoying it so much. Sometimes I really feel guilty, and I really do. I have a life that would be envied, and what is envy is it's so strange. As I was thinking about it today, I've got happiness and joy in my life, and I spent 47 years looking for it, and until I really came to the realization of I need to have as much true things in my life as I possibly can. And as more true things come in, the closer I am to the truth, it seems like the happier I am. So, you know, I'm like a lot of people. I was born and raised in a religious home. And I don't mean like we went to church on an occasional Sunday or Christmas. I mean, my father was an assistant pastor of a congregation of, probably 500-600 people. You know, there was a standard we had to live up to. And I was always a disappointment. You know, I was a kid that had some severe learning disabilities. I'm 53 now, and I realize I'm on the autistic spectrum. And so a lot of those traits, like the hyperactivity and like tics and things like that. And so as a child, it was so difficult, and we had to live up to the standard. So like there was never an opportunity to think that this wasn't real. I mean, it was always real. God is real. I mean, it had to be real. So we went to church 3 times on Sunday, once during the week. We had daily prayer at my house. I don't mean we said grace, you know, God is good, God is great, you know, thank him for the food. No, it was prayer. I mean, it was serious stuff. So I grew up in this type of environment. I think a lot of people can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
And as a teenager, like a lot of people, I backslid. Oh, I got worldly. So basically, I did some stuff that as a species we desire to do, and that is go out and listen to some fucking music and drink some beer. And I was doing stuff that at the
You were
time I
being a
was considered.
teenager.
Oh, I was
You
a
were just being a
rebellious.
teenager.
Oh, yes. And I think many people did the same thing. And
Yeah.
I just went overboard, of course, restricted so much. I mean, I wasn't allowed to watch TV on Sundays. I mean, it was a pretty strict household.
Yeah.
And spare the rod, spare the child. I don't need to get into that episode number 1. But, you know, I didn't need the extra stress that was added to the problems I already had. But that's life. It happens, doesn't it? And so as a teenager, I did the teenage thing and got rebellious. Always believed in God. I got heavily involved in hallucinogenic drugs. And I overdosed a couple of times on some opioids and really messed me up a little bit for a little while. And I was just a broken person. And then I met my sweetheart, who was also a broken person. And, you know.
Yeah, I remember when we met. Babe. We sat in my dad's baby blue K car.
Yep. Yeah. And I didn't know if I wanted to put LSD in the water tank so the whole town can experience the kind of life I'm living, or if I wanted to become a preacher. Like it was always there, wasn't it?
You said you were going to be either a drug dealer or a preacher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. So when so at the time it was such a strange time to but this idea that God did not exist or religion or what I was taught was wrong was never an option. Like even if I didn't believe the teachings of the religion, I wouldn't question the deity. And so at 32 years old, after backsliding for years and years, I decided to get saved.
Hallelujah.
And it was quite a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
At the time, my marriage was in terrible shape. My health was in terrible shape. I mean, I was a heavy smoker. I was under a lot of stress. I was overweight. I mean, I had a lot of strikes against me. And I spent years and years after that. They called me an evangelist. I never grabbed hold to the reading and writing very well. So, I ended up, of course, like most people on the spectrum, or I shouldn't say that, but a lot of people, I never received an education. I finished school at age 15. So it's been a struggle, but God was always there, it seemed. To me, was my best friend. And I don't know how I can articulate this, but to make a long story short, at 32, I got right involved with the church again, and I kind of, like Catherine, did a lot of the pastoring, of course, and I went around, did some speaking because I was charismatic, and I was charismatic because my heart was in the right place. And I know some people personally on this panel, and I know their heart is in the right place, like it was when they were in the ministry, and it is now. Like they want the best for mankind, to people around them. They want to touch somebody to improve their life. I think that's an admirable trait. And the people that are in the ministry today, it's that their heart's in the right place. It's not malicious. No. I had a bad experience as a child, but I see all the good that in these people, So at 47, and I retired, and I took some time, and I realized that bit by bit, like these Bible stories, they're just fairy tales.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. It was once I was faced the actual question, is it real or is it not real? I really had to examine my beliefs, and I had to examine why I believed what I believed. And the conclusion that I came up with is because I was born in it, because I was raised to believe it, because I was surrounded by people who believed it, I also believed it. But I never meant anything malicious. I wasn't one shred of me. My heart was always in the right place.
And so tell us what you consider yourself to be now.
Well, if there is something after we die, no one has died and come back with any type of evidence to prove that there is. So I feel at this point, for me, that we're all in the same ship, the same boat together. Now, it might be the boat that's sinking a little bit. I don't know, but we're all in it together. And we're not getting out of this place alive. We're all going to face the same thing. And I think we're all going to end up in the same place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a deity, I'll have to talk to that deity and say, hey, dude, listen, you know, you could have made it a whole lot simpler. It's pretty convoluted, the whole thing. Now, I won't get involved with that, but come on. I mean, you know, you can't expect a person to believe something that goes contrary to every bit of evidence that mankind can find. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, you know.
So you consider yourself to be an atheist?
I would consider myself to be, I would consider myself at this point to be an atheist.
Yeah. A lot of people.
I don't believe in deities, the
Yeah.
supernatural. I just don't believe in those things. I haven't
Mhm.
been presented with any evidence to make me even
Okay.
consider that it could be real.
Right.
And it's a shocking thing to admit. It's scary. It's a hard thing to, I don't know how long I've been. I should have been watching my time.
We're gonna give somebody else. We're gonna give somebody else a chance.
Do that. So that's where I am right now. So we'll see where it goes from there.
You're open to evidence, hey.
Oh, if anyone has any evidence, come on with it.
Babe, who are we going to introduce next?
You should go with all the bald people.
Oh, okay. All right. Carrie.
Whatever the Holy Spirit leads you to believe, my darling.
Carrie, you're up next. Tell us about you.
My name is Carrie Walker. I am a former fundamentalist evangelical minister. My preaching work was the point of my entire existence. I was raised in my faith. My earliest memory was being told that I was going to be a preacher. I was at the church or meetings that we were going to, and every day of my life, that was the goal that was put before me. It was expressed as being the only logical, rational choice for someone who cared about God and wanted to do God's will. It was the whole obligation and duty of man was to do that.
Wow.
And I was considered part of a group that was given the privileged position of being the one true religion, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with being told.
We all thought that.
But my ministry training included what I then later learned was referred to as anti-theism, the idea of taking the individual specific theological positions of other religions and sort of debunking them using our own to show that we were the one true religion. So there was really no greater enemy or greater target that one could find in one's preaching work than another believer of a different faith. They were the target because they had already done the hard work of believing in a God, in a way. And so it was just a matter of introducing them to what we offered as being a more biblically sound theology than the one that they believed in. And all religions fell under this. There was not a religion that didn't have a flaw that we couldn't point out why theirs was flawed. And so for years, it was just a matter of me believing that I was a true Christian doing the right thing, even though I had doubts and questions about some of the doctrine itself. I too, like Sheldon, didn't think that God wasn't there.
Yeah.
I had been raised to think that the fear of God was an actual fear, that you were supposed to be afraid of his judgment every second of your life, because Armageddon could come at a moment's notice. Undeclared sins would deem you unworthy. So if you were not walking with God in your thoughts, second by second every day, you risked being judged unworthy and being destroyed. And so from the moment you woke up to the moment you went to bed, you dreamed of Armageddon. You dreamed of the end of the world. You dreamed of everyone around you that was a non-believer being killed. And only you and those select believers would be saved in that fashion. And that had a very dark impact on my psychology growing up. it, on one hand, it filled me with a sense of self-righteousness, believing that I was,
Yeah.
there was something special about me.
Yeah.
A kind of confidence that I had a truth that nobody else understood.
Yeah.
And that related itself to my preaching work. I was known for public speaking. I was known for my ministry, to the point where I would be surprised when I would meet new people. They would know who I was, and I was curious because they weren't a member of my congregation. They weren't even someone who I think I had ever met. They knew who I was, and so I had a particularly, I don't know. I had a reputation, and then I later learned I needed to decide if I was proud of that reputation or not, in a way, because I had been taught for years that other religions were false, and these were the reasons why, and you could walk yourself through this sort of critical skepticism of their theology. But I
Mm-hmm.
had never done it with myself. I had just been
Interesting.
raised to think that this was true, and I was technically too scared to try otherwise. And it wasn't until I started hearing the arguments against my position and becoming offended by them that people dared to challenge what I knew was true,
Mm.
that it got my back up, and I wanted to prove them wrong. And it just so happened it was Christopher Hitchens. And so I got it into my head that I was going to be the guy that would take him down no matter what.
Okay.
And I was going to show that everything that he said was wrong. Now, granted, he had some failings in debate style,
Yeah.
but he also made some very valid points. And as soon as it dawned on me that he was making valid points that I couldn't refute, it's a house of cards. The first card falls and the rest come down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because he was really good at attacking foundational claims. And I know a lot of people are very fond of like a more passive, mild street epistemology approach, and that is very useful in many circumstances. But I know that when you're dealing with certain very dogmatic, fundamentalist, literalist, the hardcore of the hardcore believers,
Yeah.
attacking their root belief can have exactly the same response that I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
They're going to engage that center of defensiveness where they're going to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
And if you can kickstart them into that critical analysis and they realize, wait a minute, there's not really the grounding that I thought I had.
Yeah.
And so now that I consider myself an atheist in the fact that I don't believe in any deities, but I'm also aware of the different claims that are made, so I disbelieve those claims as well. And I was trained in the style of anti-theism, of preaching against the worthiness of other religions. So I even accept the common definition of anti-theism, of being opposed to organized religion, to as well as specific academic anti-theism, where I will specifically challenge specific theological claims. So if someone says they believe in a God, I will find out which one they're claiming they believe in, and I will go at them for it. And this is the nature of a lot of the debates that I've had over the years. It's naturally very contentious. You're talking about people who have very ingrained beliefs. It is nothing that happens quickly. My own experience was that it took about 5 years of me doing my own self-reflection for me to figure it out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Me too.
I was married at the time, and I was able to assist my ex-wife in that regard as well, because we both recognized that we had made certain equivocations in terms. What we called love wasn't really what anyone else was calling love. What we called like a healthy fear of God was not a healthy fear of God.
Right.
And like what we called truth wasn't what everyone else was referring to as truth in a common vernacular. We
Right.
had all of these special terms with special definitions, or common terms with special definitions, that we were using to construct this worldview
Yeah.
that you know, it was just one massive equivocation after the other, and
Yeah.
it all fell apart. And here I am today.
Yeah.
I'm still in some method engaged in the kind of anti-theism that I was trained in, but from this perspective, I have a better grounding. I actually went through the philosophical studies of trying to determine what constitutes proper grounding. What is it that when someone says that something is true, what is it they really mean?
Yeah.
There's a common usage that we use in the day-to-day term of something that's in accord with reality.
Right.
That's the definition you'll usually find in a dictionary. But what happens when somebody redefines truth to be that which is the reflective of the mind of God or the thoughts of God?
Yeah.
You're not talking about the same truth anymore if you use truth in the same sentence.
Right.
And so there's a lot of conversation that needs to get down to so that you're sharing a common ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, the common ground I'm always trying to look for in any discussion at this point was a belief that I held even when I was a believer. In my ministry, I preached that, you know, the golden rule was a good idea, that sort of thing. But it was only the second commandment of Jesus. It wasn't the most important one. The first one was that everything you have, your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength was to be devoted to God. Everything was to be devoted to God.
Yeah.
Which didn't leave room for humanism as I could see it.
Yeah.
And especially when we had scriptures that were saying you had to obey God as ruler rather than men. So whenever there was a conflict, you were always looking to see what was God's opinion on these things.
Yeah.
From scripture.
Yeah.
And for many believers, unfortunately, I mean, you got Christian Scientists and Jehovah's Witnesses and others who will forego medical treatment.
Yep.
Because they have a dogma
Yes.
that they're not allowed to pursue specific treatments.
Yeah.
They have to rely on faith healing, or they just have to rely on God, even if it means the death of their children.
Yeah.
And
shocking.
They may call that the sacrifice of Abraham, because that was what convinced God that Abraham was a good servant, was his willingness to love his child.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can't view that as anything but inhuman.
Yeah.
And those that wish to follow on that path, believing that they can appeal to a God, specifically the Abrahamic God, which seems to be what the majority of the world seems to follow. At its core, that seems to me to be an inhuman position.
Yeah.
Allowing you to commit atrocities because you are believing in absurdity.
Yeah.
And that's where my anti-theism is based.
Right.
The
Right.
idea that if you and I can embrace the second commandment of Christ and be good humanists, we can build everything that we all enjoy from that. We don't have to go down the dark path. You know, we don't have to go down the path of total submission.
Yeah.
And the extremism that fuels.
Right. Right.
And that's where I am today.
Yeah. Interesting. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, Gary, a lot of it. Yeah, for sure. Especially the house cards thing. I've said it 100 times that when I lost my faith, that's what it felt like. Let's go with the next bald guy. Kurt. We'll go with the more hairy later.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everybody who's watching or will watch this. And real privilege to be on. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. 5 minutes, approximately, give or take, to introduce who I am. Well,
it's not as easy as it sounds.
I thought I would approach it maybe to start with this way, and that was I thought I would describe for just a minute who I feel like I am when I'm at my best, when I'm my truest self.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those characteristics of who I am when I'm the true Kurt Lewis. I would say that I'm passionate about communication as a means to understanding and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I have a mind that loves to ponder things, ponder science, ponder history, ponder philosophy, ponder how my children's mind work, how my own mind works. Yes, I'm a father to two girls, 12 and 7. I forgot to mention I'm 46 years old, and I'm reaching out to you today from Sacramento, California. And so what are some other things? I think that I have an inner joker that loves to toy with societal norms. I have a deep emotional well part of me that feels grief often, and it sometimes can take me into a pretty melancholy or depressed space. But I also can be pretty goofy and perhaps funny, depending upon your sense of humor. Those are just a few things that I think are true about myself.
Yeah.
And then I think that the other thoughts that I had was to look at it at that who I am from two angles, and that is that life has happened to me. Things have happened to me in life that I had no control over, and like a number of us on that, religious indoctrination was a huge part of that. I was the old saying goes, was born on Saturday and in church on Sunday. And so that was the environment I grew up in. And I should just note that was an evangelical, a conservative evangelical, largely kind of Baptist upbringing. And life happened to me. And so I believe now very strongly that I experienced a lot of religious trauma along with some other things. So I had some beautiful things happen to me in my life so far. I've also had some pretty shitty things happen to my life.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that, though, is that I happened to life. I responded in a variety of ways. And like all of us, we're kind of scratching around in the dirt, trying to figure things out. And some of the ways that I responded to the things that happened to me, I feel ultimately ended up perpetuating some of the pain that I was a victim of. And the number one example of that would be my ultimate embrace of the Christian faith, and ultimately my commitment to be calling, Catherine, as you said earlier, the deep sense of a calling to be a leader in the church. And so I went on that route, even though now I look back at it and there's just many aspects of that journey that just really weren't me. It was me being who I thought other people wanted me to be, rather than who I was. So like a number of us, some of my background, I think that's kind of the point of this episode is there's such a great diversity of group of us here.
Yes.
You're going to hear various aspects of our stories that is going to connect to somebody out there.
Yeah.
So for me, yes, like a number of us, I went to Bible college, I went the seminary route. I was in the evangelical world. I graduated from Multnomah Bible College, went on to Western Seminary eventually, served in a number of pastoral roles, denominations like the American Baptist denomination, Christian Missionary Alliance, a non-denominational kind of Baptist charismatic church. That was a little bit of my baptism, I should say, into more of the charismatic or Pentecostal world. But one thing that I think that might relate to a number of people who might watch this is I also went really deep into kind of the area of faith-based social justice work. And that would largely be expressed in the approximately 7 years that I spent on staff with World Relief, which is a faith-based NGO. It's the humanitarian arm of the National Association of Evangelicals. And a highlight of that experience would be that in all that time, I was specifically working with refugees being resettled into the United States. A whole other story for another time is I'm also a combat veteran. I served a tour of duty in Iraq way back in 2003. My life has taken me some really interesting twists and turns. And I ended up serving as the director of the Sacramento field office of World Relief, during which at one point we were the second largest resettlement agency field office in the nation. all of this, I should say, in the lead up to the lead up and the immediate aftermath of the 2016 election, where my own community rallied behind a man who vilified, among many other groups, immigrants and refugees. So you can imagine there's a lot of interesting stories that came out of my experience in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, I would just say that it's been almost 4 years since I left the church, and a little over 2 years since I publicly came out and said that I had left Christianity as a whole. I consider myself an atheist, an anti-theist in some regards, with regards to the systemic privileges that organized religion has, that I think it should not have, especially financial, in terms of tax code and things of that nature. But ultimately, I'll close with this. I was thinking of what is my hope for an outcome for this, and I can imagine that there are people either watching or listening right now, or will in the future, who are either in ministry, they're in religion, and they sense it. Something is wrong. Something is not right, and I need to get out. That maybe in the process of doing that, you might connect with what happens and what's spoken of in this group. And then the other group is those who have left. And I think that you're going to find reflected amongst this group, and there's so many wonderful people out there in that space. I've found really a new family, a new church, if you want to call it that. And that is that you're going to find some individuals to join you, fellow sojourners towards a life of real freedom, a real peace. Yeah. And so, as they say in recovery, the recovery traditions, one of the common phrases, you are not alone. You are not alone if you're hearing this. And glad to be a part of this group and look forward to sharing more in future.
Well, we're really looking forward to hearing more from you too, Kurt. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. Let's go on to one of our ladies. Let's go with the one with the longest hair. Ashley. Ashley's one of my new friends. I'm just going to go on record and say I love Ashley. Every time she says something, I say, me too. We have a lot in common. So welcome, Ashley.
I agree. Thank you. Well, my name is Ashley. I was in the ministry from the time I was 18 years old until the time I was 27. So it was a total of 9 years. And then obviously next week, we're going to get into our stories, how we got into that. So I'll save that for later. But so I'm going to start at around like 18 years old. So 18 years old, I got recruited into a program called Master's Commission. And it's really similar to Teen Challenge and, what are some of those other ones?
We have Master's Commission at our church too.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, so that's how I kind of got sucked into the whole thing. So I went through Master's Commission at 18 years old. I was a student for a couple of years. Then I was an intern at 21 years old. And then I married the assistant director when I was 22. And then the next year, him and I became directors of the program. And so Master's Commission, just like a real short snapshot of what it is, it's kind of like a Christian boot camp. It's very strict. There's very strict rules, curfews, and you get consequences. We call them early morning clubs, where you would have to go to the church at 5 o'clock in the morning on your day off for every infraction. And you'd have to do deep cleaning for that 3 hours per infraction, or, running, like suicide runs, it was great. Okay. Oh yeah, you got something up here about Master's Commission. Okay.
When you say cleaning, do you mean like spiritually cleaning or like scrubbing the toilets of the church?
Like scrubbing like floorboards and like walls and the pews and the floors, and just for hours. If you got 2 infractions, that was 6 hours from 5 in the morning until 11 in the morning. It was horrible. And it'd be like if you were 1 minute late. So you had to be 10 minutes early to everything. So if you were 9 minutes early, you were 1 minute late and you got an infraction. And so anyway, there were we did hours and hours of prayer and worship. I mean, at a minimum, 2 hours a day. Sometimes if the Holy Spirit was moving, it was like 6. And we did a lot of manual labor. We did missions trips, and we did a lot of helping of the community. We were basically like a traveling church service that we did human videos, you know, where we like acted things out to music and stuff. And then we had shared testimonies. We had a sermon, ended with an altar call, and hoping for an offering so we could get money, and then we could try to talk to the youth, like the seniors, so we could recruit them for the next year. Yeah. And so eventually Master's Commission fizzled out, and my ex-husband and I, we went on to be assistant pastors of the church. And so I, you know, kind of like you, I basically was involved in everything except for men's ministry. I mean, all of it, all of the areas.
And you probably cleaned up after it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something I was going to actually get to. So, eventually, when I left religion, I left because of the contradictions in the Bible, the lack of evidence for Jesus, lack of evidence for the entire Christian century. I started looking into the original word that hell was translated from, realizing that there was really nothing to be that scared of. And then, you know, unlike some of the people here who were indoctrinated through family and children, I actually kind of was very drawn to the prayer and worship myself. I almost kind of feel like I indoctrinated myself. And so I didn't have a knowledge of the doctrine and the things in it until I actually started going through Bible college, and I was in Master's Commission. And I was an assistant pastor with an associate license. And around the time that I became a skeptic was the last couple semesters that I was in college. And so I kind of pulled out shortly after that, you know, left the church and everything, because I started to actually see the things that were in the Bible, you know, in the Old Testament, how violent and hateful it actually was. And that my personal morals no longer lined up with my beliefs anymore. And it was just kind of a realization that I had, oh, sorry, I just realized I'm scratching myself and stuff. So, at about in 2013, when I was 27 years old, I became an atheist and I left the church. And the whole story is crazy chaotic. I mean, the whole story could literally be a Hallmark movie if I unfolded the whole thing. So I left 8 years ago. It's been just about my 8-year anniversary, and I'm now remarried and actually to a chemist. I have full custody of my daughter, who I had with my ex-husband. He's still a pastor out there in Iowa, and I live here in Ohio. So he's still involved with that exact same church that I left 8 years ago.
Wow.
And so I have custody of my daughter here. She lives with me all year long, and I have a stepson as well. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom with MS. I choose to raise my kids with understanding that there are no evidences for any of these religions, and they can choose for themselves. I'm really very open about my disbelief in it because I don't want them to be sucked in and scammed. And in this time, 8 years later, I feel way stronger now about it than I did even 8 years ago when I first left. I consider myself obviously an atheist, a humanist, skeptic, free thinker, all of that stuff, but I definitely consider myself an anti-theist. I think that religion has a negative impact on small and large scales, and I see no positive impact for it. And anything positive that you could find in it, you could also find out of it. So these days, I guess we're going to plug in maybe our social medias and stuff that we have.
Go ahead.
I don't really have, I mean, I have a personal like Facebook and stuff, but I'm not really out there in a religious poisons everything. That's true. I am like on board with everything Christopher Hitchens says. And so I kind of, I'm not really out. This is kind of my platform, is this YouTube here. I do have a personal Facebook and stuff, but I'm not really out there and stuff like some other people are. These days, I kind of retreat to myself, and I enjoy not being required to do all of the things that I did back then, especially as a woman. You know, even though I was a woman in leadership, I was still under men, and I was still put in the roles that a woman was typically put in. So these days, I'm like, I just keep to myself. I'm cool to just kind of, you know, be done with all of it.
Yeah. I hear that.
Oh, my sister, hi, Paige.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Ashley. That was really great. You're great. I can't wait to hear some more of that that story of you coming out, that Hallmark card story.
Hallmark movie. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, let's hear from I don't have my glasses on now, so let's hear from Tim.
Yo.
Hey, Tim.
It is me. I know I'm kind of like Sheldon, you know, how do you prep for talking about yourself?
Yes.
I guess I was born at a really young age, so that I have that going for me.
Oh, me too.
And even and born again at a young age.
We actually started a group for people who were born at really young ages.
Excellent. I'll be sure to join.
Good.
Anyway, yeah. So I guess my story is that I've always, I guess I was rocked in the gospel cradle, as they say. For me, like I said, very early beginnings, I fell asleep under church pews to all the goings on in, I guess it was Pentecostal churches, what I was raised in. So it was very evangelical, very, you know, much based on, you know, the whole Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues and all those things. So definitely saw a lot of things throughout the years, fell asleep to a lot of things and woke up to a lot of stranger things. And so, you know, I mean, I guess I didn't really have a chance. Like, I mean, some people came into it at a, you know, older age and things like that. I didn't really have, I guess, in a sense, a choice. I basically followed what everybody around me was doing. And even from a young age, I was always told, you know, or I guess kind of pushed towards ministry and, you know, had this call on my life. And so that was the whole trajectory of my life basically was based on that. Yeah. And something I believe it was Carrie spoke about earlier, talking about how we have those, I guess, stories in our head based on Bible, you know, on the literature and things. I mean, I had stories about how my life was going to play out. I had stories about how what heaven was going to be like, what I was going to be like in heaven, you know, what hell was going to be like for everybody else and all those things. So that was kind of my, I guess, indoctrination, was that I was totally in it. And like Sheldon was saying, I was totally genuine. Yeah. I don't think there was ever a day that I wasn't genuine in what I believed. So even anything that I may have done that may have been offensive to somebody else, it wasn't something that I was trying to do on purpose. It certainly wasn't malicious in any way. It was just, that was all I knew. I didn't have a period of time where I backslid and built a testimony for later on, you know, or any of that kind of thing. I was pretty much, you know, the whole way up until, you know, just, you know, in recent years. And so, I mean, I like I said, I did the whole thing. I ended up, when I was 17, 18, I actually went in to prep to go into the Canadian military. But at the same time, simultaneously, I was applying for Bible college. The military thing didn't work out. And of course, then there were other prophecies over me and all these kinds of things. And so I ended up going to Bible college. So I did a 4-year degree program focused on youth ministry. And like I said, the whole ways along, funny enough, though, I did, even through that period of 4 years, start to question some things. You know, I have to say, for a place that was very Pentecostal centered, I had a couple really good profs that were open. They obviously weren't questioning things, but the way they presented material made me come out of that place different than the totally indoctrinated person that I'd gone in as. So it's kind of interesting to think that. I mean, some of them had
Yeah.
come from actually different backgrounds as well. They weren't all Pentecost their whole lives as well.
Right.
So they had some different perspectives. I know people who came through, the cookie cutter and just kind of, they actually went out the door 4 years later as the exact same person they were when they came in. For me, I guess being an active thinker and having a super active mind, I was constantly, asking questions, always thinking, like I said, the stories that I had made up in my mind about how my life was going to play out and how
Yeah.
the end and eternity and all that. I mean, I'm sure there's more like me that have that kind of,
Yeah.
life as well. Even now, people who are still in it, even if you're 40, 50, 60 years old, probably still have this, I guess I almost call it like a dream sequence now that's in your head that you believe that's how everything's going to play out in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it vivid. I mean, I see the things vividly. I can still remember them vividly.
Yeah.
The stories I have made up in my head.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I did that. I came out of Bible college. I never went directly into youth ministry. I worked with a lot of different organizations, a lot of parachurch organizations. I worked in youth corrections and used to go into a youth correction facility doing some, basically like video analysis, on life issues and that kind of thing. And also worked at the youth facility afterwards, a few years after. So, I've done a bunch of different things. Also was involved, as Catherine knows, with, a church for a while where I guess I was considered the worship pastor. I'd been playing music and, singing and doing whatever, my whole life. And obviously in church was a large part of that because, of course, at the time, that was the only place I could do it.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't allowed to do it anywhere else.
No.
I do remember one time practicing for Sunday night service with the windows open in the church and having the pastor come to us later and saying that he appreciated that we wouldn't play Sweet Child of Mine anymore during the Sunday afternoon. But, so I guess we were kind of rebellious to a certain degree, but,
a little
anyways,
bit.
that was,
Yeah.
so, basically everything I did, everything I lived for was all about the church and about religion and about God. Everything I saw about my future and how I viewed life was based on that. And like I said, I'd done all the things, in ministry, worked with, multiple different organizations, hundreds of different people. I was kind of the guy in my circle that kind of knew the Bible inside and out. Like that was, all these, the thing, I don't know if they do them. They did them in Newfoundland anyways, the whole, having to, somebody give you a scripture and then you'd have to find it first and jump up and, read the scripture. That was me. I was always the guy. It didn't matter if it was in my home church or if it was in like 1,000 people at a youth camp. I was the guy who always did that. Always knew where to find it. And
what about now? What's your standing? What's your theistic view now?
Right now, I consider myself agnostic, which kind of means I don't know anything. To put it bluntly, I guess really it's basically saying that I certainly question the majority of the things that I was brought up to believe. I definitely believe there's been no evidence to really prove a lot of the things to be true.
Yeah.
And a lot of my own questioning came just from interacting with different people. One of the biggest things I had was when I always knew as a believer growing up that, God was going to save the drug addict and he was going to save the alcoholic and do this. And when I got interacting with people who were normal, regular people who didn't have any real issues, I was like, well, what do I offer them?
Mm.
And so I was like, they seem okay. They are enjoying life. They have great families. They're not horrible people. They're not abusive. They're not, whatever, dirtbags. They're not, they're not treating people horribly. They're not, which was all the things that I believed if I turned my back on God, that I would become this horrible person who couldn't sleep at night because my guilt and conscience was just going to nag me all night long.
Yeah.
And and either that or I was going to turn to drugs and alcohol and just become abusive of those things. And the reality is that I actually feel that I'm probably a more compassionate person now than I ever was, and I love people more than I ever did. All kinds of different people, because now I have no restriction on what type of people I love or care for. And I mean, I can still be, I'm sure I can be a hard person at times, because we all have our own opinions on things. And I'm certainly not short on expressing my opinion. But I believe overall, you know, I sleep like a baby at night. I'm not worried about every little thing that I've done in my life as to whether I'm going to be judged for it or whether I'm going to go to hell for it. I certainly don't believe in hell. It's something that I don't believe, even if there was a loving God like the Abrahamic God, that if he believed in hell and throwing me in that place, then I don't want to know him anyways.
Right on.
I guess that's my, you know, if that's the kind of, you know, deity that I'm supposed to be following, then he can just stay over there, and I don't really want anything to do with that anyways. I'm not completely sure whether there are deities. I have some belief that there is something besides my physical body. Whether you call that spiritual or soul or whatever you call that, I definitely believe there's something else. But I definitely have thrown out my belief in the, I guess, what I was taught through the Bible.
Right.
You know, I haven't examined all the evidence. Obviously, I mean, it's a historical document. The Judeo-Christian values have some merit for sure, you know, because it's probably kept some people from being horrible people. But I think we probably could have been that way. I think there's a sense of altruism in probably most people, unless there's maybe a major mental health issue that's maybe compromised some of those things. But other than that, I'm married with 4 kids for 26 years, and you know, loving life, enjoying life.
Loving life. And for those of us who for those of you who pick up on some accent, yes, 3 of us are from Newfoundland on the east coast of Canada.
I do not have an accent.
You do not have an accent. Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Let's hear from, so we have Tuck and Kathy and Dwayne left. So who wants to go next? Kathy? No. Okay, Dwayne?
Hi there. Isn't it nice to be here with all you crazy people? You know, I learned a lot tonight. I've heard things from you people I've never heard before. So Sheldon is the codfather?
That's a long story. I'll tell you after.
My father-in-law is watching this thing. He's from Musgrave Town. So the next time, David, over you talk to me, you have to say, and how's the codfather?
Right.
What a name. So, all right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. We're a little bit over time, so let's try to
I've noticed, and I'll try and tone this down a bit. So, you know what? Here I am. I'm an ex-minister. I left religion a long time ago. I was one of those Pentecostal types. Originally, I got indoctrinated in 1968. That's about 53 years ago. That's a long time to get rid of crap. But I was in foster homes as a kid, and the 5th, and they were all, by the way, they were good. Most of them were good homes, so no problem. And in the 5th foster home, they were really strong Baptists, so they made sure I went to Sunday school every Sunday, whether they went to church or not. I was in Sunday school with their kids. So that's where it started. And eventually I became a Jesus people. Anybody remember Jesus people? And if anybody's watching who don't know Jesus people, just Google it. You'll learn more than you ever want to know. Essentially, it's a bunch of dirty, leftover, unwashed hippies in bell-bottom jeans with the biggest Bible you could find. And that was us. From there, I went to, I became a Christian at 14 because I didn't have a foundation in life. I didn't have, religion. They say religion is a crutch. Well, I was certainly limping at 14, so I took the crutch. And I moved on in life. I worked at Teen Challenge. Ashley mentioned Teen Challenge. I worked at Teen Challenge, and from there I went to Bible school. and blah, blah, blah. I eventually, went into ministry professionally. And religion now reminds me of the Trooper song, "Cruising on a Sardine Boat Loaded with Crazy People." I'll sing it for you. Anyway, and religion became such a hardwired part of my life that Sheldon mentioned backsliding. Well, I did too. I took a few years off and I became a professional stand-up comedian in 1986, and I stuck at it till 1990. And then, when I was incidentally, Howie Mandel's father, for some reason, liked me a lot. I don't know why, but he did. And his words helped me to stop doing stand-up comedy and go back to ministry. What a dumb thing to do. But anyway, I did it. And, I don't want to ramble on, but because we're going to be doing this every Sunday for weeks.
Yes, we're going to get a chance to
so,
really
so
dive
here's
into
a taste of what I'm about. I guess I never really stopped being a comedian, did I? But no one's laughed at that. Okay, I'll try again. I'll fix that joke. So anyway, I feel like religion not only took me on a weird route, but it also abused my children inadvertently. I got 4 adult children, and all of them, thankfully, can I say thank God as a joke? Thankfully, they all
after all those years, it's hard to get out of the
habit. As did my wife. Everyone just left. It was so cool because we have at least a cohesive family, no matter what other problems we have in our lives and our personal lives. Yeah, at least the Grady bunch, the real life Grady bunch. Here I am. I'm 15 or 16 years out of ministry, and every bit of joy, every bit of success that I chased after as a minister and as a Christian, I get now.
Yeah, weird, hey?
I didn't. And the guilt. Who was speaking before me? I'm just so paying attention. It was
Tim was just before
Tim.
you.
Hi, Tim. Okay, so fellow East Coaster, by the way. I was. Most of my foster homes were on the East Coast, thank God. And East Coast people are lovely. They really are.
Some of us are okay.
But there's a lot of innocent ignorance back back home, and there's a lot of strong religious beliefs.
Yes, yeah.
And that haunted me. I was caught by my great Aunt Anna, lovely Aunt Anna, playing cards on a Sunday. Oh, don't you know that got me in trouble for weeks?
Yeah.
And how
silly. If you were in Master's Commission, you'd be cleaning the toilets for a year.
Yeah, I was a little too independent for that. But no, the Army. That's what will do it to you. So anyway, does this give you a picture of who I am and what's about? Because there's lots of details that don't matter. And like I said, surviving.
What do you consider yourself now? What label do you?
I am distinctly a non-theist.
Non-theist, yeah. It's funny how we all have different labels. Hey.
Yeah, well, atheist, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's all good, I suppose, but the most important thing is to be out of religion. And what I've seen, most notably with my family, is everyone has felt more free to be who they are.
Yeah.
And what they are.
Yeah.
Without restriction.
Yes.
I mean, without getting into details, oh my God, if we were still in the church, all of us would be in a closet of some kind or other. Start asking questions about the closet.
Thanks, Dwayne.
So there you go. On to something else. I'll pass the baton.
Thanks, Dwayne. Looking forward to hearing more.
All right, next time.
Tuck.
Perfect.
Tuck is a new friend that we have all just recently met, and we were all on a call a few nights ago, I guess it was, and what a laugh we had. Tell us about you, Tuck.
Humble flex here just a little bit. So, unlike the rest of them, I was born to be a god.
Ooh.
So, ex-Mormon bishop here, one of my most amazing scriptural, I will say, because they say everything a prophet says is scripture. They literally, one of their doctrines is, as man now is, God once was. As God now is, man may be. That is Mormon doctrine. So I just want to throw that out there because myself being born in America, God's chosen country, sorry to all the Canadians, even though I went back and forth to Canada as, again, so a couple of humble flex. And,
no.
And born as a cisgender, heterosexual male, white in America, as a Mormon, I had it made. And it's fascinating, right? Because as you are indoctrinated into this from the very beginning, what's interesting is I thought I was unique because my church just so happens to be the only true church on the face of the earth, unlike the rest of yours. Right? So having all of these things, right? So being this white male Republican cishet, as my kids would call them, the arrogance. I think that's one thing that's so fascinating from, and probably many of us can look back at ourselves and realize the arrogance that came with that, because we're all extroverts anyways, right? And many on the call were paid extroverts to stand on the table in front of the group. So my youth as an extrovert, basically, I had it made. The interesting part, as I've noticed through my journey, and that's probably one of the biggest things that left me after in my, what is 2013, where I realized that there's something wrong with my religion, and I have to, you know, hats off to those that came before me and found out about the church, to my oldest son, my sister, my brother, who actually helped me go through that transition. But again, indoctrinated in the church, back and forth from, I live here in Colorado, married 31 years, 4 kids, a couple on the LGBT spectrum, and extremely proud because unfortunately I would have no relationship with them now if I had still part of the Mormon church. And nothing against those, you know, family members. Well, I say nothing against, absolutely something against those family members, friends that I love dearly, who do their best to share love, yet on a weekly basis go back and give money and support that organization that is truly a hate organization against, well, everything, right? And so did my Mormon mission in Brazil for 2 years. Probably one of the most embarrassing things now is we have a patriarchal blessing in the church. So just like the patriarchs of old, you have a patriarch in your local region. They pray over you, and they actually speak with God, and they give you this blessing. And this is supposed to be a guide, you know, nothing supernatural, just real facts, a guide for your life. And I was told that while I was on my mission, that if I was valiant and was obedient, that I would be revealed to me what my profession would be. And Mormons, of course, only the top tier are paid. The rest of it's all volunteer, so you have to have your own job. So my dad just so happened to send me a brochure on the same career he was doing. And voila, there it was. I felt great about it. Like many of us does, your prayers are answered. So I immediately came home from my Mormon mission, skipped college, went straight into the career with my father, my grandfather, and spent almost 18 years as a third generation in financial services and doing a job that I felt like I was destined to do by God. Hating it, being self-employed, struggling, but eventually, and I'll fast forward, we're out of time here because there's a lot, right? So got assigned my secret Mormon underwear. Everyone wants to know, just Google quick, Mormon underwear. It's a real thing.
Oh, we will be asking you.
That could be a whole one, right?
We will not get away from talking about the underwear.
Yep. So now I will just say what triggered mine was a family email by my younger brother, who is a lecturer of religious studies down at University of Arizona, sent an email to the family talking about the racism in the church. I, as the bishop and oldest brother, was kind enough to call him to repentance and let him know that he had erred in his ways and needs to repent, and started doing my homework and realized that, in fact, the church was racist. That was the end. That was around 2013. Yeah. Since then, my wife, family has all left. I'm currently an agnostic atheist, and don't know anything anymore. I'm just curious.
And we're okay with not knowing anything anymore. It's
And
funny
that's
how
okay.
we lost all the answers when we became atheists, hey?
Right. Lost
Yeah.
all the arrogance. It's too bad. I'm not as important as I thought I was. That was disappointing.
Yeah. Carrie mentioned that too, and the confidence and stuff. And Sheldon has said this lots of times over the years, like with having a learning disability and ADHD and stuff, that I did it again. Oh, wait, I remember. Yeah, that the confidence that he did have, he thought was it came from the Holy Spirit. And so, yeah,
Right.
I totally lost my train of thought. I promised I wasn't going to do that. And so now we have saved the best for last. We have
No.
my dear friend Kathy, who, if I was still a Christian, I'd be thanking the Holy Spirit that, for putting us together. So,
Aw.
let's
Pixie dust, Catherine. Well, I noticed my name tag says Aunt Kathy, and I want to explain that because I am not aunt to anybody on the panel. I am aunt to Oz and a few others around the country, but and it was his divine encounter with me, that pushed me into doing. Now you can take that down too. Yeah, I just go by Kathy, please. Anyway, I've learned something tonight listening to all of you, and that is, Dwayne, you and I have something in common. I too went into the foster system. I grew up in a very abusive home. And for my protection, when I was about 14 and a half, I was placed into foster care. And it was actually my third or fourth foster home that was a girls' group home that was a ministry of a church in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I came to have a spiritual experience. I was very ripe and wanting and needing to be loved and cared for. And I was, by that time, I think I was almost 16. Anyway, it was also during the Jesus movement. And after I came to know the Lord there, I got very involved right away and helped to plant a coffee house and that reached out to kids everywhere. And it was a very successful coffee house. The band Petra came out of that, as well as Honey Tree. I think a couple of others whose names I can't recall at this time, but the coffee house lasted for about 10 years. So it was very successful. But anyway, I met my first husband through that ministry and got married too young. And he later wound up going into the Navy. And we went through lots of struggles, and I had two beautiful daughters with him. But then there was a divorce, and at the early part of that time, right before the divorce, we had moved to Virginia, near Virginia Beach, and I wound up in a church with one of the elders being a vice president at CBN. And so I was able to go to work I thought I was going to be working in a little bit of heaven with Pat Robertson and all the glorious things. And it was like 3 hours into my first day that every bubble I had burst. It was like, you're just working with people, anywhere you go, you're with people. Anyway, I worked there for 3 years, and then through there met my second husband, who was a minister. He had been ordained and active in the Methodist Church for many years, and then came to CBNU, which is what it was called at that time, to get a little bit more of the Pentecostal flavor, the charismatic flavor of things. Before he and I got married, I was involved with Women's Aglow and other parachurch organizations, did a lot of teaching, a lot of writing of Bible studies, and establishing women's groups and women's Bible studies. And then we pastored, and we were married for 30 years. And long story short, 6.5 years ago, I left him. And about that time is when I started questioning a lot more. I had been for a long time. Several things, several prayers that were never answered, things that I had seen happening with lots and lots of questions and no answers. And then went through a very difficult time with the divorce because my Christian friends who were supposedly going to be there to help me pick up and get back on my feet again suddenly all forgot that I was alive. And so I was on my own at 60 some years old, and I got nothing out of the divorce except $300 in debt. And no furniture, no anything. I had my clothes and my sewing things. So I was in my early 60s starting from scratch.
Wow.
And yeah, that was
that can't be easy.
That was my, really, God? Really, are you up there? And this is what you like? Yeah. I've given you my whole life. And through that time, I just felt more and more that my two daughters and I were more disconnected than ever. And that really troubled me. And I knew the basis of that was religion. I knew that they had pulled away from the church. And I did not like not having open communication with my daughters. Several months ago, I knew that Oz had been doing the TANG programming here, and I called him and I said, can we go to lunch? And I don't know what he expected. I know it wasn't his Aunt Kathy having questions and letting him know that I was the one that brought the entire family into the Christian faith. Mm. His mom, my brother, my other sister, my mother, and here I am now questioning it all.
Yeah.
And he's my Austin, not Oz. That's hard for me to call Oz. We had a good conversation. He gave me books to read and was available to me, talking to me, and we had get-togethers, and he just helped put a word to what I was going through.
Yeah.
And that was deconstruction.
Yeah.
And I had tried listening to.
That's what I was
yes.
going to say.
He was prepared for a sermon. Yes.
Probably thought you were going to lay hands on him.
No, he remembers when I first sat down, the pizza was in between us, and I said, I am not here to try and convert you. Wow. And he shares that when I left before he did, he sat in his car going, what in the hell just happened? Who was that person? Yeah. So anyway, I consider myself now an explorer, and that's sort of the name of the show I've got on the TANG network is Vintage Explorer, because I am vintage. Vintage is over 50, antique is 100. That's in furniture. So I'm over 50. I'm probably the oldest of this group, actually. Only my hairdresser knows for sure. But I'm 68 and proud of it. Hey, I've done well. I've done well. I got good genes. Yeah. Thank you, Grandma. But I do not believe anymore in the God of the Bible, of what I was taught. I'm exploring. I am agnostic. I don't know what I am, but I know the biggest change for me since I made the decision to leave what I had believed is that the fear that I had in my life, my whole life, left me immediately.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
That stranglehold that I had, you know, I couldn't pray it away. It was always there. You know, it was just always there.
Yeah.
And I do see a big correlation between abusive families and Christianity. And I think that's a whole show right there.
Yeah.
So my mission is to be a part of things with you guys and use the platform with Oz on TANG to be of a help in any way I can to help educate people, especially people in our age group.
Yeah.
I know there's many who are just sitting out there afraid or sitting in a pew and they don't believe it anymore, but they can't.
Yeah.
They just can't leave.
Yeah.
Or they just can't acknowledge that, I just don't believe it all, but I'm here because of my family or whatever. So, I just want to encourage people to get free.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. That's amazing. We got everybody, right? We got everybody in. Wonderful.
We did.
Okay, well, all right. So I guess I'm going to pick somebody to close in prayer, I suppose.
Bring Oz in from behind the curtain. Let him close in prayer.
Oh my goodness. Old habits. I'm telling you. Speaking of Oz, I want to thank Oz for helping this old gal out that doesn't know anything about the technology and streaming and all that stuff. And so thank you to Oz and the Atheist Network group TANG for streaming this for us and keeping me calm. I messaged him this evening just before we started, and I said, I'm having a hard time logging in because my hands are shaking so much. I'm so nervous. So anyway, and he was really encouraging. So thank you. Thank you to everybody. I want to say this, in addition to the this webcast that we have, we also have a audio podcast on Spotify with the same name, Unordained. And that's where we post the recorded interviews. Right now, there's only one posted, but we have about 5 or 6 more. We've had conversations with gay conversion therapy survivors, religious trauma experts. We have some deconversion stories that we're going to share. So, so, follow that and subscribe to our YouTube channel because I have a horrible URL and I cannot change it until I get 100 subscribers. So do that. And next week, we're going to talk about how we got religious in the first place, which is kind of what we were going to talk about tonight, but then we thought we would introduce everybody instead. So next week, we're going to talk about how we got religious, and there will not be 8 or 9 of us on. This is just a one-time thing so that everybody could get to know everybody. For the sake of conversation, we're going to have probably 4 people on in each episode. And so I think that is it for me. And happy Thanksgiving to all my Canadian friends.
Thanks, everyone.